Good day, Athens, and welcome to another Side to That Story podcast. I'm your host, Mara Zuniga. This podcast will address local topics from the sides of the community that are not being voiced by the local media or heard by the local government. Good day, Athens, and welcome to a special edition of my podcast. Normally, I record every 2 weeks. However, with elections coming, I wanted to interview somebody that had to do with elections. And I got a very special guest today, Ms. Ann Till, Board of Elections Vice Chair. Good afternoon, Ms. Till. Thank you very much for being here today. How long have you been on the board?
3.5 years.
And how are the members selected in the Board of Elections?
The GOP appointed me. The Democrat Party appointed Rocky Raffle. And then the commissioners appoint the other three. There's actually 4 Democrats on the board and 1 Republican.
Now that's interesting because 3 get appointed by the commissioners, right?
Mm-hmm.
Wouldn't that basically give the commissioners power over what is supposed to be an independent body?
Oh, definitely. And someone that I was working with during ballot duplication last week just said the silent part out loud that 2 of the board members were put forth by the Democrat Party.
The 3 positions that the commissioners appoint there, they're supposed to be nonpartisan though, aren't they?
They're supposed to be nonpartisan, but we don't have any nonpartisan members on the board.
So let me ask you, how does the agenda for the Board of Elections get set up? Who sets it up and how does it get to everybody's hand?
At one point when Rocky initially became our chairman, he would, or Adam, the secretary, would contact me and ask, did I have anything to add to the agenda? But over the past 6 months or more, they have excluded me, and it wasn't unless I felt something really needed to be discussed that I would put in my thoughts.
Now, Adam Shirley, what's his position?
Adam Shirley is our secretary.
Secretary, okay. And you are vice chair. So
Yes.
if Rocky is chair and you're vice chair, wouldn't it be kind of straightforward that you both would work on the agenda setting?
I don't think that we have the same agenda, which is the problem. Adam and Rocky are the same political slant, and I am in the opposite. So they leave me out if all possible.
Now, the commissioners have had previous problems with what seems to be control issues. Like they like to control who get on boards and things like that. I mean, a perfect example would be Tim Denson with the oversight to the police. Were you aware about the numbers that were manipulated to get certain members on that board?
Not that particular board, but more recently, a letter or memo some sort sent by the mayor to the Board of Elections telling us what he wanted us to do.
How so? Can you explain that a little bit?
With the District 2, if you don't know the background, their Commissioner Mariah Parker, she went through a series of resigning, where she wrote a email, but it wasn't sent to the governor, it was sent to the mayor, and I'm sure she knew the proper way to resign, the procedures. The Board of Elections was supposed to take over at that point to have an election, a special election for a replacement. So the mayor sent a letter to the board saying that he wanted that special election to happen in March of 23 so they could get Melissa Link in there. And that's what we all knew, even though it may not have appeared in his letter, because she would give them the number of voting block that they needed to get past whatever they wanted passed, as they've been doing in the past. And it's not a real secret in Athens. People know what's going on. And when the board had their meeting, our chairman didn't even present to the board to vote on November 8th, 2022. He just brought forth the March 21st, 2023 date. And of course, He and his voting bloc passed it, and that was the end of it in about 1 minute. The board and the commission and the mayor are willing to stifle the rights of the people in District 2. They're willing to overlook what the voters, the taxpayers, are legally bound to receive like other people. Let me remind people that the Board of Elections posted that this District 2 would have a vote on November 8th. It was posted.
It was posted,
And then it suddenly disappeared. So you could see that things were being manipulated, colluded, if I want to be bold enough to say those things. But anyone that was following the story and paying attention to it could see what was happening.
The Board of Elections has been in the news a lot about District 2 situation, but they're not new to the controversy.
No.
I mean, I was looking at an article, right? The March article says, State Election Board investigating Athens-Clarke County decision to use hand-marked paper ballots. This was March 5th, 2020. And it talks about how the Secretary of State's office says it is investigating whether there are violations of at least 6 different state laws and rules regarding elections. And then they go in and say which are the laws. And it says one of the laws mentioned mandates that every county use the same voting system, which Athens-Clarke County is not following after the board cited a different state law. Then the second article talks about how Athens-Clarke County Elections Board, and this was online Athens-Clarke County Elections Board ran up 40,000 legal bill in failed paper ballot move. Now, I heard it was more like 100,000.
Yes.
This says Athens-Clarke County commissioners have voted to pay 41,000 in legal fees for the county's runaway Board of Elections. And then it says Drake authorized hiring government law specialist Thomas Mitchell to defend the local board in the hearing, but the board, in addition, hired another lawyer, Brian Sells, who submitted a bill for $23,000. Now, is this true that the board hired another lawyer?
It was Jesse Evans. I remember this meeting at the library because Jesse came around and he laid stacks of paperwork for each of us, and then he wanted to vote on it. And I said, I haven't even read it. And it was where he had hired this additional civil rights lawyer from Atlanta to defend what he was doing. We had very little debate about it, and come to find out, he actually had hired, I didn't know that Judge Drake had approved one of the lawyers. We were told that Jesse had hired both of these lawyers. He had done it over the weekend. He had not spoken with, as far as I know from what I was told, that he had approved it through the mayor or the commission. We were told through no one that he acted on his own. And when we had this meeting at the UGA with the Secretary of State coming down and bringing his board and listening to the lawyers over a couple of days present their case, that Jesse knew exactly what he was doing, and he decided that he wanted us in Clarke County to use paper ballots so it would be secure, because he was told, I think, or so he said, by members of the Athens-Clarke County voters that they didn't like the screens on the voting machines, because anybody that walked by could see who they were voting for. Well, you'd have to stand there several moments to look at the screen to see who was marked and who wasn't marked.
It seems almost like an independent action, though, on his part, because you would think that it would be a question that would be put out to the community. He was advised against it by the attorney.
Yes. Judge Drake told him in that meeting at the library that he advised against it. But at the hearing, when Jesse is sitting in front of the Secretary of State and the election board there, he was advised by our attorney to not do that. And Jesse told Raffensperger that I'm making this decision. This is what I want to do. And he went against what our attorney advised him to do.
But yet still we spent $100,000 of taxpayers' money. Now, I was looking at this article still, and it says, situations like that. Anyway, this article says Commissioner Jerry Smith thought the commission should deny the elections board request to pay the legal bill. I think this would be a terrible precedent, Nesmith said. I'm glad the Board of Elections brought this up, said Commissioner Melissa Link. It's become increasingly clear that Republicans are suppressing the vote in Georgia, and this was a strike against that, she said. Now, this is interesting. Melissa Link said that this was about suppressing the voting in Georgia, when now, 2 years later, it seems that in order to get her into District 2, there is suppression of voting here, suppression of representation. I just find that very hypocritical. Another thing that I heard was that, and I don't know if this is true, but I heard that Hank was just appointed to the Board of Equalization. Did you hear anything about that?
Yes, he sent us an email that he had taken this appointment.
This board, according to what I was reading, evaluates appeals for the tax assessment on primarily, I believe, commercial properties. Not having experience as the incumbent Beverly Logan, he indicated he will have to take classes to understand this board and its functions. And I'm a little concerned. Hank was the deciding vote for pushing the November 8 election. We all know he was the deciding vote. And now he gets appointed to this. I just wonder how many favors come into play when people vote a certain way. When he was the deciding vote, the room was full of people that were against the March 2023 vote. Yet Hank did not care that many people would go unrepresented for many months, and it must have been hard to sleep at night having made that decision.
He told the crowd there that it was an easy decision, which I saw as a slap in the face to all of the black and brown people that the Democrats always tout that they are representing and working for the right of black and brown people. But so often I have seen on the board that none of these things are considered. It's really what my affiliation is. And I'm even thinking from knowing Hank, I think he's a very intelligent, he seems to be a very kind person. I think he's really torn and easily persuaded by numbers. And he tried to tell the board and the public that he looked at all of these numbers, but there were actually, I think it was like 9,120 people in District 2 that now have no representation. But he's looking at the numbers of in the future what people will be represented.
Both meetings where the November 8 election, special election was brought up, I did not see people that were for the March 2023 election. They were mainly people that were against it. And yet we are told that the majority of people want the opposite. So numbers, in my opinion, can be manipulated. District 2 members were saying, we're willing to get someone we don't like, but they need to be in that seat as of right now because we don't want to go on without a person in that seat.
The Board of Elections is to provide elections for people when they need elections.
Let me ask you something. How do you see the future for voters in Athens given the history of this board?
The public stands before the camera, before the commissioners and say, we want this and we don't want that, and yet the commissioners vote for what they want. And it seems like two, especially of the board members, direct the agenda that they want and they direct the vote that they want. And sounds to me many times that the dialogue is scripted when we are having a discussion, as though everybody's already read the page that I haven't seen, and things happen sometimes very quickly. Something's brought up, maybe the agenda doesn't really flesh out what we're going to talk about on this particular subject, and then it's all suddenly quickly voted on and done. A representation of the county as a whole, it seems to have special interest, certain people, certain agendas, that we're headed in that direction.
How would you recommend community members to get involved?
Your vote really matters, and if you really care about your community, your county, your state, you need to say so. You need to be bold enough to get up, go to the polls, and vote the people out that you don't like what they're doing. And don't be afraid that you have no power. If you study history and if you know what has happened in other countries, because we're a new country still, you can see that what evil hates the most is good.
Mm-hmm.
What evil is really afraid of, the people rising up.
You know,
Educate yourself on issues.
educate yourself on issues, yeah. In town, there are certain news outlets that, for some reason, are okay with just partial information. And actually, that's what the podcast is about. I want to talk to people who have that other side of the story. Information that's not fully given to the public is a lie. I'm sorry. The mayor could be saying one thing and doing another. The commissioners could be saying one thing and doing another.
Yes.
And I see that constantly, but what's being reported is what they're doing, what they're saying, and not really what they're doing. Did you hear about the dinner that they had, the mayor and Rocky at the Globe? You did hear about that, right?
I did.
The
I found that.
celebratory.
Yes.
For the folks that don't know what we're talking about, on the day that the Board of Elections voted to have a March 2023 election, right after that meeting, the chairman of the Board of Elections went to the Globe and had what it seemed to be a celebratory dinner with the mayor and some commissioners.
Yes, that was our September 2022 meeting that we had at the library.
That's right, yeah. Well, thank you for taking the time to discuss some issues here.
My pleasure.